Farms are not collapsing with explosions or headlines. They are disappearing quietly. No smoke, no dramatic final day, no viral footage, just land that stops being planted, gates that remain closed, machines that never start again. From a distance, nothing looks broken. The barns still stand, the fences still trace the borders of old fields. The road still cuts through the land like it always did. Nature does not signal bankruptcy. But economically, the operation is already dead. This is not a story about lazy farmers. It is not about incompetence or poor decisions. It is about a system that slowly removed the possibility of survival. For most of the 20th century, farming was difficult, but logical. You invested in the land. You planted, you harvested, you sold, you paid your debts, you kept a small margin. You repeated the cycle. It was risky, but understandable. It was unstable, but predictable. Debt existed, but it was temporary. A bad season could be repaired by a good one. Equipment lasted decades. Prices fluctuated, but not violently. A family could plan 5 or 10 years ahead with some confidence. That logic is gone. Today, farmers operate inside an environment where nearly every variable works against them at the same time. Input costs rise faster than crop prices. Machinery costs more than houses. Interest rates punish long-term investment. Weather patterns no longer follow old rules. Markets are controlled by companies larger than some governments. And every risk is pushed downward, onto the farmer. The modern agricultural industry presents itself as a story of progress. Bigger machines, smarter seeds, digital dashboards, precision farming, automation, drones mapping fields from the sky, satellites analyzing soil moisture, algorithms predicting yields. On paper, farming has never been more advanced. In reality, it has never been more fragile. Production increases, efficiency increases, technology increases, profit does not. In many countries, farmers today work more hours than their parents did and earn less money than their parents earned, adjusted for inflation. They are more productive, more specialized, more dependent on technology, and financially weaker. This contradiction is not accidental. It is structural. Small and medium farmers are trapped between rising costs and shrinking control. They do not set the price of wheat, corn, soy, or milk. They do not control global supply chains. They do not control energy markets. They do not control currency values. They do not control interest rates. They control only their labor. And labor alone is no longer enough. Every year, thousands leave the industry. Some sell their land to large producers. Some lease it to corporations. Some abandon it completely. Some hold on until debt forces the decision for them. Most never announce it. They do not publish goodbye messages. They do not organize press conferences. They do not become statistics on the evening news. They simply stop. A family that farmed for 3 generations quietly disappears from the system in a single winter. The silence hides the scale of the collapse. Governments publish production numbers. Corporations publish profit reports. Banks publish lending data. Agricultural expos celebrate innovation. But nobody counts how many farmers decide, in silence, that they cannot continue. And that silence is convenient. Because the modern food system depends on the illusion of stability. Supermarkets must look full. Prices must appear normal. Supply chains must appear solid. Consumers must believe food will always be there. The reality is more uncomfortable. Behind the shelves and packaging, the system is running on debt, consolidation, and exhaustion. The number of farms decreases every year. The average farm size increases. Ownership concentrates. Production becomes centralized. Risk becomes invisible. What looks like efficiency is often desperation disguised as optimization. Farmers adapt not because it is profitable, but because it is the only way to delay collapse. They buy larger machines to reduce labor costs. They adopt new chemicals to compensate for degraded soil. They take loans to survive one more season. They expand acreage to dilute losses. Each solution creates a new dependency. Each dependency removes another layer of freedom. At some point, the farm no longer belongs to the farmer in any meaningful way. It belongs to the bank, the supplier, the equipment manufacturer, the insurance company, and the commodity market. The farmer becomes an operator inside his own land, responsible for everything, in control of nothing. This is how farming stops being a livelihood and becomes a financial trap. Not with drama, not with fire, but with spreadsheets, contracts, and quiet decisions made at kitchen tables late at night. This is the beginning of the exit. The collapse does not begin with failure. It begins with costs, not dramatic costs, not sudden disasters, Slow, permanent, unavoidable costs. Every modern farm is built on inputs. Seeds are no longer saved from last season. Fertilizers are no longer optional. Pest control is mandatory. Fuel is constant. Machinery must be upgraded. Software must be licensed. Insurance must be renewed. Compliance must be paid for. None of this produces food. It only allows food to be produced. And every year, it becomes more expensive. A farmer today does not buy from a free market. He buys from an ecosystem controlled by a small group of multinational suppliers. Seed genetics are owned by a few corporations. Fertilizers come from global chemical giants. Machinery comes from brands with near monopoly power. Financing comes from institutions that profit whether the harvest succeeds or fails. The farmer does not negotiate. He accepts. If fertilizer doubles in price, he pays. If diesel triples, he pays. If replacement parts cost more than last year, he pays. If software subscriptions become mandatory to unlock equipment features, he pays. Refusing is not an option. Without these inputs, production collapses. And without production, the farm dies immediately. So farmers pay. They cut personal expenses. They delay repairs. They reduce staff. They mortgage land. They take new loans to cover old ones. They absorb the shock. Now compare this to income. Crop prices are not controlled by farmers. They are set by global markets that react to weather on other continents, political conflicts, currency fluctuations, speculative trading, and corporate stockpiles. A farmer can produce perfectly and still lose money. A farmer can increase yield and still go bankrupt. A farmer can modernize everything and still fall behind. The system rewards scale, not survival. Large producers dilute costs over massive acreage. Corporations hedge risk through financial instruments. Small and medium farmers cannot. They face the same prices but without protection. This creates a structural imbalance. Costs are fixed and predictable. Income is volatile and unstable. It is the opposite of sustainability. To survive this, farmers borrow. Credit becomes the oxygen of modern agriculture. Loans pay for seeds. Loans pay for fertilizer. Loans pay for machinery. Loans pay for land leases. Loans pay for last year's losses. At first, the debt seems manageable. Interest is low. The harvest is good. The system feels stable. Then a dry season arrives. Or floods. Or a market crash. Or fuel prices spike. Or interest rates rise. One bad year becomes two. Two become permanent. At this point, the farm is no longer a business. It is a debt management operation that happens to produce food. Farmers stop asking, "Will I profit this year?" They start asking, "Can I survive one more season?" This psychological shift is invisible from the outside. Fields still grow, crops still move, trucks still drive, but internally, the goal is no longer growth. It is delay. Delay foreclosure. Delay default. Delay selling land. Delay telling the family it is over. Input suppliers continue to sell optimism. New chemicals promise higher yields. New seeds promise resistance. New machines promise efficiency. New technology promises control. Each promise requires new spending. Each solution increases dependency. And each dependency removes another exit. Because once a farmer upgrades machinery, he must use it for years to justify the cost. Once he adopts a specific seed system, he is locked into its chemicals. Once he takes a loan, his decisions belong partly to the bank. Choice shrinks. Flexibility disappears. The farm becomes rigid. Costs rise even when income falls. This is the cost trap. You cannot reduce expenses without reducing production. You cannot reduce production without destroying income. You cannot stop without losing everything. So farmers continue, not because it makes sense, but because stopping is worse. From the outside, modern agriculture looks like efficiency. From the inside, it feels like suffocation. A business model where working harder increases risk. Where technology increases vulnerability. Where success is measured by how long collapse is postponed. And the most dangerous part is this. The system calls this normal. Banks call it leverage. Corporations call it innovation. Governments call it modernization. Farmers call it survival. But survival is not the same as living. And it is not the same as sustainability. It is simply what happens when leaving becomes more expensive than staying. Modern farming is built around machines. Not as tools, but as the foundation of the entire system. A farm without advanced equipment is not competitive. A farm without constant upgrades is considered inefficient. A farm without digital integration is treated as obsolete. Technology is no longer an advantage. It is an entry requirement. Tractors now cost more than suburban houses. Harvesters rival the price of small commercial buildings. Planters are financed like luxury vehicles. Even basic implements require multi-year loans. Few farmers can buy these machines outright, so they finance them. 5 years, 7 years, sometimes 10. During that time, the farm does not belong fully to the farmer. It belongs partly to the bank, partly to the manufacturer, partly to the financial system that profits from the interest. The machine becomes a contract, not a tool. And once the contract exists, the farmer must keep producing at maximum capacity, regardless of market conditions, weather, or personal health. Stopping is no longer possible. Because the machine must be paid, the technology itself increases dependence. Modern tractors are controlled by proprietary software. Repairs often require authorized technicians. Spare parts are restricted. Diagnostics are locked behind corporate systems. The farmer does not fully own the machine. He licenses it. This changes the power structure. If equipment fails during harvest, the farmer waits. If software malfunctions, the farmer waits. If parts are delayed, the crop waits. Time is no longer controlled by nature alone. It is controlled by supply chains and service schedules. The machine that promised efficiency becomes a point of vulnerability. And vulnerability creates obedience. Manufacturers offer solutions, extended warranties, service packages, subscription features, upgrade paths. Each one adds cost. Each one increases lock-in. Switching brands becomes financially impossible. Returning to simpler equipment becomes unrealistic. The system pushes forward, not because it is better, but because reversing is too expensive. At the same time, debt accumulates. The farmer owes money for land, machinery, inputs, operating credit, past losses. Every decision is filtered through one question. Will this satisfy the lender? Not. Is this sustainable? Is this healthy? Is this smart long-term? But, will this keep the cash flowing long enough to avoid default? This transforms the psychology of farming. Traditionally, farmers optimized for resilience, diversity, soil health, long rotations, conservative growth. Now they optimize for short-term output, maximum yield, maximum acreage, minimum downtime. Because lenders want numbers, banks do not accept ecological arguments. They accept cash flow projections. This pressure reshapes the land. Fields grow larger, hedges disappear, crop diversity shrinks, soil is pushed harder each season. Machines prefer uniform landscapes, finance prefers predictable models, nature becomes an inconvenience. The irony is that technology does increase productivity. Farms today can produce more food per worker than at any point in history. But productivity is not profit. In many cases, higher production only leads to lower prices, because markets are saturated. The farmer runs faster. The treadmill accelerates. The destination does not change. And when something breaks, the consequences are severe. One mechanical failure during harvest can erase an entire year of income. One rejected loan can end a multi-generation operation. One increase in interest rates can turn a manageable debt into an impossible one. At that point, the system offers only one solution: consolidation. The farm is sold, the land is absorbed, the machines are repossessed or transferred. Production continues. The farmer disappears. From the outside, nothing changes. Corn is still planted, wheat is still harvested, milk is still delivered, only the name on the mailbox is different. And the number of people making decisions is smaller. Machines were supposed to free farmers. Instead, they chained them to a system that requires constant expansion, constant borrowing, and constant risk. Not because farmers chose this path, but because the system made every other path unviable. The farm became a node in an industrial network. Efficient, replaceable, financially fragile, and completely dependent. When a farmer fails, the farm does not disappear. It is absorbed. Land does not remain empty for long. It is too valuable, too strategic, too profitable in the hands of someone larger. Banks do not want fields. Corporations do. Investment funds do. Large agricultural groups do. When a small or medium farm collapses under debt, the transition is silent and efficient. Paperwork changes hands. Ownership is transferred. Production resumes under a different structure. Food keeps flowing. Only autonomy vanishes. This process is called consolidation. It is presented as efficiency. Fewer farms, bigger operations, higher output, lower unit costs. On spreadsheets, it looks like progress. On the ground, it looks like extinction. Every year, the number of farms decreases. Every year, the average size of farms increases. Every year, more land is controlled by fewer entities. This is not a side effect. It is the direction of the system. Large operations have advantages that small farmers will never access. Cheaper credit, bulk discounts on inputs, political influence, legal departments, risk hedging, direct access to processors and exporters. They can survive price drops that would destroy a family farm. They can operate at a loss for years. They can wait. Small farmers cannot. When consolidation accelerates, choice disappears. Seed options shrink to what large buyers prefer. Crop diversity narrows to what global markets reward. Production methods standardize. Local knowledge becomes irrelevant. Decisions move away from the land and into corporate offices. The landscape still looks rural, but control is urban, financial, abstract. Farmers become employees, or contractors, or disappear completely. In some regions, agriculture is already dominated by corporate entities that own no local history, no cultural connection, no generational memory. Land becomes an asset class. Not a home, not a legacy, an asset. This changes everything. Corporations do not farm for resilience. They farm for return on investment. If soil degrades, they apply more chemicals. If water tables fall, they drill deeper. If biodiversity collapses, it is recorded as an externality. The system optimizes for quarterly results, not for decades. Small farmers traditionally acted as long-term stewards, not because they were morally superior, but because they had to live with the consequences. Their children inherited the soil. Their future depended on the land remaining productive. Corporations inherit balance sheets. If one region becomes unprofitable, capital moves elsewhere. Land is replaceable. People are replaceable. Only profit is sacred. As consolidation grows, rural communities shrink. Schools close. Shops disappear. Services vanish. Young people leave. What remains is production without society. Food without farmers. Villages become logistics zones, and political power follows consolidation. Large agricultural groups influence regulations. They shape subsidy programs. They negotiate trade agreements. They define standards. Small farmers do not sit at these tables. They adapt to decisions made for them. This creates a loop. Consolidation increases corporate power. Corporate power reshapes rules. New rules favor large operations. Small farms fail faster. More consolidation follows. The loop tightens. At the end of this process, farming still exists. But farmers do not, at least not as independent actors. They become technicians operating systems they do not control, or data points in supply chains, or memories in family photo albums. The public rarely notices. Supermarket shelves remain full, prices fluctuate, but food appears. The illusion of continuity is maintained, but something fundamental is lost. Choice, not just the farmer's choice. The system's choice. What to grow, how to grow it, where to grow it, why to grow it. These decisions become financial, not agricultural. And when food production is reduced to a financial strategy, stability becomes an illusion. Because finance does not feed people, land does. And land, under a system optimized for extraction, does not recover easily. When farmers disappear, food does not disappear immediately. That is what makes the collapse hard to see. Production continues. Machines run. Trucks move. Exports grow. Numbers look stable. From a distance, the system appears healthy. But structurally, something critical is gone. Redundancy. Resilience. Human judgment rooted in land. A system built entirely on large centralized operations is efficient, but fragile. It has no shock absorbers. Small farms used to be buffers. If one failed, others survived. If one region suffered, another compensated. Diversity created stability. Consolidation removes diversity. Now a single drought can affect millions of hectares owned by the same entities. A single financial crisis can freeze credit across entire regions. A single geopolitical conflict can block fertilizer supply for half the planet. A single software failure can immobilize thousands of machines. When production is centralized, failure scales. And modern agriculture is now one of the most centralized systems on Earth. This means food security is no longer agricultural. It is financial, logistical, geopolitical. The soil becomes secondary. The spreadsheets become primary. Farmers once made daily decisions based on observation. Moisture, smell of the soil, plant behavior, animal health, subtle changes invisible to satellites. Algorithms cannot replace this. They approximate it, but approximation is not understanding. When farmers disappear, knowledge disappears with them. Not knowledge written in manuals, but knowledge accumulated through decades of mistakes, through intuition, through failure, Through adaptation, corporations do not inherit this. Employees rotate, managers change, consultants advise, but no one lives with the land long enough to truly know it. This creates a delayed collapse. At first, production rises, then plateaus, then becomes dependent on increasing chemical input, then soil degrades, then water systems weaken, then yields fluctuate, then insurance costs rise, then food prices become volatile, then governments intervene, then shortages appear, not as famine, but as instability, as price shocks, as sudden scarcity of specific foods, as political tension, as migration. Food does not need to vanish to cause chaos. It only needs to become unreliable. History is clear about this. Every major social collapse includes food instability. Not always starvation, often unpredictability. When people cannot trust access to food, systems fracture. The irony is brutal. The modern agricultural system was designed to eliminate risk, to standardize, to optimize, to control. It succeeded in removing small risks, weather variability, local pests, seasonal uncertainty, but in doing so, it created systemic risk. Risk so large that when it manifests, it cannot be contained. Farmers were never just producers. They were stabilizers, distributed decision makers, decentralized intelligence. They made the system flexible, adaptive, alive. Without them, agriculture becomes an industrial process, and industrial processes break differently than living systems. They do not bend, they snap. The disappearance of farmers is not a nostalgic tragedy. It is a structural one. It means food production becomes a financial instrument, managed for return, optimized for efficiency, disconnected from ecology, disconnected from culture, disconnected from long-term survival. In such a system, the question is no longer, how do we feed people? It becomes, how do we maintain profitability while feeding people? Those are not the same problem, and they do not produce the same decisions. The quiet exit of farmers is not just the end of a profession. It is the removal of a safety mechanism, one that no amount of technology can replace. Food will continue to exist, but stability will not permanently, not safely, not equally, and when the consequences finally reach consumers, it will look sudden. Prices will jump, products will vanish, supply chains will fracture, governments will react, corporations will adapt, and the public will ask how this happened. The answer will be simple. It did not happen suddenly. It happened slowly, one farm at a time, one loan at a time, one machine at a time, one quiet decision at a kitchen table, late at night, when a farmer realized that continuing no longer made sense. Not because he failed, but because the system did.